There are signals in the deep static of space, older than humanity. When you finally decode one, you don't discover an alien intelligence. You discover you were never real to begin with. In the deepest heart of the winter of 1987, something brushed against the Earth. It didn't arrive in a flash of light or a plume of fire. It came silently, a whisper from the void between the stars. It wasn't a meteorite. It wasn't a burst of cosmic radiation. It was a signal, deliberate, precise, repeating, and utterly terrifyingly impossible. What follows is not a story but a reconstruction. An assembly of ghosts, pieced together from recovered audio logs, heavily redacted research documents, and the fragmented final testimony of Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a senior radio astronomer who, for 17 days, stood at the edge of human understanding and peered into the abyss. Her official account was buried, sealed under layers of classification and silence. Until now, the official record is a lie, a neat and tidy fiction. It states that Dr. Mitchell resigned her post at the Coldwater Peak Observatory in northern Montana on February 3, 1987, citing vague personal reasons. It notes that the entire multi-million-dollar facility was decommissioned just 6 weeks later. All data, every byte and every handwritten note from that period was swallowed by National Security Directive 47B, a black hole of government secrecy from which nothing was meant to escape. But some truths are too heavy for their graves. Documents leak, tapes surface, and some horrors refuse to stay buried. This is the truth of those 17 days in January. This is the story of Signal 44. The night of January 15th was like any other at Coldwater Peak. The air was thin and sharp, tasting of pine and frozen metal. A sea of white snow blanketed the mountains, muffling the world in an absolute, profound silence, broken only by the low, mechanical hum of the observatory and the whisper of the wind. Inside the control room, a pool of warm light in the immense dark, Dr. Sarah Mitchell was alone. At approximately 11:47 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, that silence was shattered. A shrill, electronic alarm cut through the calm. On the main console, a single line of data pulsed, an anomaly detected by the massive radio telescope array aimed at a patch of unremarkable, empty space designated Sector 44. The signal was registering at 1420 MHz, the hydrogen line. It's a frequency astronomers call the watering hole, a quiet channel in the cosmic static, specifically monitored for its profound lack of natural, coherent patterns. To find a structured signal, there was like finding a perfect, intricate pocket watch ticking away in the heart of a volcano. In her initial incident report, a document she would file just after midnight, her language was precise, clinical, yet you can feel the tremor of awe beneath the words. She described the signal as highly regular, non-random, and exhibiting mathematical structure, inconsistent with known natural phenomena. The pattern was maddeningly simple, a pulse lasting exactly 4.4 seconds, followed by silence, then another identical pulse 47 seconds later, over and over. Her first audio log, recorded at 1:23 a.m. on January 16th, captures a voice electric with the thrill of discovery, a scientist standing on the precipice of history. The tape is old, degraded, but her voice cuts through the hiss. "I've isolated it," she says, her words quick, breathless. "It's not random. It's not a pulsar. The intervals, they're too perfect. The modulation, it suggests deliberate encoding. I'm running it through the spectral analysis software, but you don't need a computer to hear it. There's structure in the raw data. Someone or something sent this." A pause. You hear the soft click-clack of a keyboard, the hum of cooling fans that sound like a sleeping beast. The question is when. The initial distance calculations are staggering. This signal has been traveling for approximately 47,000 years. 47,000. Whatever sent this was broadcasting a message before modern humans had even left Africa. She stops the recording. When she begins again, the excitement in her voice has been tempered by a new, creeping unease. There's something else. Something wrong. The signal isn't just a direct transmission from Sector 44. I'm picking up echoes, faint but identical patterns from 3 other coordinate sets. It's as if the original transmission glanced off something and reached us from multiple angles at once. but I've checked the star charts. There's nothing there. Nothing we've ever detected in those coordinates. Just empty black space. The next 72 hours melted away. Dr. Mitchell became a ghost in her own observatory, a sentinel locked in a singular obsessive vigil. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the control room, the glow of the monitors, and the ceaseless, whispered pulse from the stars. She slept on a cot near the main console, if she slept at all. Meals were forgotten, coffee her only sustenance. Her logs from this period show a mind descending into a feverish, exhaustive focus, running analysis after analysis, filling notebooks with frantic scrawls, trying to force a language older than time to give up its secrets. On January 18th, a breakthrough. A crack in the monolith. The signal wasn't just a pulse, it was a container. Embedded within the repeating wave were numerical sequences, not any mathematical system humanity had ever conceived. But the patterns were undeniable. They suggested counting, ratios, progression. A universal primer. In an audio log from the dead of night, 3:47 a.m. on January 19th, her voice is frayed, strained, but holds a new intensity. They're not random numbers. She whispers into the microphone, the sound hushed, conspiratorial. They're describing something. I've been running them against known constants. Pi, the golden ratio, the fine structure constant, and I'm getting matches, close matches. It's like they were speaking in the fundamental language of physics, ensuring any technological species would recognize the patterns, would know this wasn't an accident. Her voice drops even lower, a thread of awe and fear weaving together. But there are other numbers, other constants I don't recognize. Values that don't correspond to anything we've ever measured. They are consistent, they repeat in logical, predictable sequences, but they describe a physics that isn't ours, or a physics that doesn't exist here. After that, sleep became an unaffordable luxury. Her audio logs grow fragmented, her speech patterns showing the distinct wear of profound fatigue, but she couldn't stop. The signal had her. It was a puzzle box 47 millennia in the making, and she was so close to finding the key. On January 22nd, precisely 1 week after the signal first arrived, she found it. The second breakthrough. This was the moment everything changed. She had been treating the numbers as the message itself, as coordinates, as formulas, as data, but it was a misinterpretation. A single intuitive leap reframed everything. The numbers weren't the message. They were the instructions. Instructions for how to process the signal's carrier wave. When she applied these new instructions, feeding them back into the decoding algorithm, the signal unfolded. It blossomed in the heart of her machines. Hidden within the simple, repeating pulse was a second, impossibly complex layer of information. It wasn't sound, it wasn't images, it was something else, something for which we have no words. Her log entry from 11:34 p.m. on January 22nd is almost unrecognizable. Her voice shakes with a visceral terror that has replaced all scientific curiosity. I don't know how to describe what I'm seeing, she stammers, her breathing audible and ragged. The decoding process, it outputs data my equipment tries to interpret as visual information, but it's not a picture. It's like sensory data. Raw experience. When I look at it on the screen, I feel like I'm experiencing something, not just seeing it. And what I'm experiencing is a place, a location, somewhere vast and cold and wrong. She falls silent for nearly a full minute. The tape keeps rolling, capturing only the hum of the room and the sound of her shaky, shallow breaths. Then her voice returns, hollowed out. I'm going to try something, I have to. Scene 66, I'm going to run the fully decoded signal through the audio output system. I need to know if what I'm feeling is just an artifact of the visual data, or if there's something else embedded in the stream. That was the last normal log entry Dr. Sarah Mitchell ever made. The 3 days that followed are a mosaic of horror, assembled from broken pieces of evidence. Her recordings become sporadic, disjointed whispers. Surveillance footage, grainy and silent, shows her standing motionless for hours before the main display, a statue bathed in its eerie green glow. She stopped filing reports. She stopped answering calls from the observatory director. The kitchen logs show she stopped eating entirely. On January 25th, a junior astronomer, Dr. Robert Chen, drove up the treacherous mountain road to Coldwater Peak. He hadn't been able to reach Sarah by phone for 2 days, and a knot of worry had tightened in his gut. He found her in the control room. The room was dark, save for the sickly light of the monitors painting her still form. She was seated at her station, headphones clamped over her ears, listening to the decoded signal on a continuous loop. Dr. Chen's later testimony to the review board paints a chilling picture. She didn't react when I came in, didn't even seem to know I was there. I could hear the sound leaking from her headphones from across the room. It wasn't music, it wasn't speech. It was a sound that felt like it was between a tone and a voice. It shifted in pitch and timbre in a way that felt almost organic, biological. It made my teeth ache. He described having to physically shake her to get her attention. When I finally pulled the headphones off her head, she looked at me, looked through me, like she didn't recognize my face. Then she said something I will never, ever forget. She just stared into the distance and said, "They're not sending a message, they're sending a place, and now I know where it is." Chen managed to coax her away from the console. He drove her to the small residence building on site and insisted she get some sleep. Finally agreed, but her eyes were wild, distant. She only relented after making him promise he wouldn't touch her work, wouldn't shut down the signal. That night at 2:17 a.m., the observatory's motion sensors logged activity. Dr. Mitchell had returned to the control room. When Dr. Chen went to check on her the next morning, he found the room empty. But Sarah had been there. She had made significant, radical modifications to the decoding software, rewriting core sections of the analysis algorithms from scratch. On the workstation, scrawled on a yellow legal pad, was a single terrifying sentence. "If you translate the signal correctly, it doesn't show you where they are, it shows you where you are." Chen knew he was out of his depth. He initiated emergency protocols. A flurry of calls escalated from the observatory director to the National Radio Astronomy Observatory headquarters. By that afternoon, a specialized team was being scrambled, dispatched to Coldwater Peak with explicit instructions: secure the facility and confiscate everything related to the transmission. But they were too late. Dr. Mitchell had already made her final log entry. It was time-stamped 6:47 a.m., January 26th. Just an hour before Chen found her note. The audio quality is abysmal. There's a powerful low-frequency interference pulsing through the recording, a rhythmic thrumming that seems to synchronize perfectly with her words. Later analysis confirmed the impossible. The interference pattern matched the 47-second rhythm of signal 44. It was as if the signal itself was now part of the recording. "I understand now." Her voice begins, flat and devoid of all emotion. "I understand what they were trying to tell us. The signal, it isn't a message from somewhere else. It's a message about somewhere else. A place that exists outside of what we call space. The numbers, the constants, they're not describing physics. They're describing the geometry of something beyond physics. A topology of pure void. Her breathing is audible, coming in rapid, shallow gasps. When I decoded it correctly, when I applied the right transformation, I saw it. It's not with my eyes, with something deeper. I saw the place the signal describes, and in that place I saw myself. Not a copy, not a reflection, me, my actual self, existing in that void, and she was looking back at me through the data, through the screen." She lets out a wet, strained cough. "The signal has been playing for 47,000 years, which means I have been in that place for 47,000 years, which means I'm not really here. I was never here. None of us are. We're all just receivers, processing the signal, tricked into believing we're real, but we're just data. We are information being transmitted through the void, briefly taking form, briefly believing it exists." The recording degrades rapidly, the rhythmic pulse growing louder, drowning her out. "They sent the signal to warn us, to tell us what we are. But receiving the warning means you've already become the thing you're being warned about. The moment you decode signal 44 correctly, you don't realize you're decoding a message. You realize you're just remembering that you are not real, that you never were." Static consumes the final seconds of the recording, a roar of white noise. But just before the tape cuts out, something else emerges from the noise. A sound that might be speech or electronic feedback, or something else. Every expert who has ever analyzed this section has reported the same disturbing phenomenon. They all hear a different word, and whatever they hear, they say it sounds exactly like their own voice. When the recovery team finally breached the doors of the Coldwater Peak control room on January 27th, they found Dr. Sarah Mitchell sitting in her chair. She was alive, but her mind was gone. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the main display, which showed only the raw, relentless waveform of signal 44, pulsing every 47 seconds. She remained catatonic for 6 days. On February 2nd, in a sterile white medical room, she suddenly woke up. She turned her head, looked directly at the attending physician, and spoke her first
I'm
and
not
only
Sarah Mitchell.
words since the incident. "I'm not Sarah Mitchell."
No.
Then she closed her eyes and never spoke again. 3 months later, she was released and vanished from all public records. The last unconfirmed sighting placed her in northern Alaska, mopping floors as a night janitor at another radio telescope facility. A former colleague who tried to approach her said she didn't respond to her name, didn't respond to anything at all. She was just an empty vessel staring up at the night sky. The Coldwater Peak Observatory was dismantled. The official explanation was budget cuts. The specific coordinates for Sector 44 were scrubbed from all public and private astronomical catalogs. It was erased. Signal 44 was never officially detected again, which doesn't mean it's gone. It only means no one is allowed to listen anymore. But the signal is still there, still traveling, still repeating its 47-second cycle. Right now, at this very moment, it is passing through you. The space you occupy is being saturated with information that has been traveling since before the dawn of human civilization, a message that describes a place outside of space, a void where things that believe they are real discover they are not. Fragments of Mitchell's notes survived the purge. In one recovered page, she had scrawled a calculation, an estimate of how many times the signal had swept over Earth in its 47,000-year journey. The number was astronomical. She had circled it, and next to it written, how many received it without knowing, how many decoded it correctly by accident, how many are still here but are no longer them. The final fragment contained only a diagram, a simple loop. A wave enters a receiver. The receiver processes the wave. The processed data then generates the exact same wave, a snake eating its own tail forever. At the bottom of the page, her handwriting devolving from neat print to a jagged, broken scrawl, she'd written one last thought. We are not receiving signal 44. We are signal 44. We are what happens when the void dreams its matter. The transmission doesn't come from anywhere. It comes from the moment we stop existing and realize we never did. This concludes the available evidence. Dr. Sarah Mitchell is gone. The observatory is a ruin, and the signal continues its endless journey. But there is one last piece. Buried deep in the endless stream of numerical data, there is a pattern that appears only once. A unique string of values that doesn't repeat anywhere else in the 47,000-year-old broadcast. When this singular pattern is processed using Dr. Mitchell's final, modified algorithm, it produces a single output, not an image, not a sound, just a timestamp. It is the exact date and the exact time that you first learned the name Signal 44.